Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are getting up and feeling fantastic out there this morning. Hopefully, when you walk out the door this morning for work or whatever you may be doing, it's like a breath of fresh air. Chances are there's a lot of people waking up this morning with a lot better conditions than maybe they were the last couple mornings or throughout the entire summer, as there's a much drier air mass dominating a good portion of the country, which doesn't just deliver nice, dry, not crisp air for everybody, but pleasant air. It also stabilizes the atmosphere, so therefore we don't have a ton of severe weather to talk about today. There is going to be a threat in the upper portion of the country with a deep upper trough digging down to the northern terrain of the lower 48, and we'll talk about that. For the most part, with a stalled frontal boundary, everybody on the good side of this boundary is experiencing some pleasant conditions, which is on the west side of it. On the east side of it, you'll continue to deal with just a very moist, unstable atmosphere and just rounds of showers and storms, but that's for a very small portion of the country. So we'll talk about that. We'll break down everybody. But I am excited to say that we don't have to talk about any major severe weather. It's a nice change of pace, but stay tuned. Towards the end of this video, we'll give you a quick update on the tropics. We'll give you some pretty good information, but stay tuned for tonight. I have soccer practice. We had to postpone it from yesterday to today because of the severe weather here locally and the intense heat. It hit 101 degrees here in Columbia, South Carolina, broke a record. The heat index was as high as 110, 115 at times before the storms moved in. So we had to postpone soccer today, which is more of just a typical summer type day. But for later this evening, I will do a video just specifically on the tropics. That's all we're going to talk about. There's a lot of things starting to point to things getting much more active. So we'll do that for you folks tonight, so stay tuned. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. You guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over? As always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So I just realized I don't have my clicker up, so I'm not going to be able to draw on this, and I'm not about to start over the video. But as you can tell, in the darker colors, like the doled out colors, the black colors, that is where dry air has been pushed down behind the system that kind of moved through this upper trough right here. So a lot of dry air got dragged down. I say a lot, but it's a decent amount for this time of the year. So I mean, you're waking up to dew points in the low 60s, upper 50s, much more pleasant conditions for a good portion of the country. Even areas that have just been blistering hot the entire summer. So, it's great to see. You can tell where the stalled boundary is right into here, where the whiter colors indicate more moisture in the atmosphere. And so we're still dealing with that in the eastern Carolinas, South Georgia, Florida, and even southern areas of Alabama and Mississippi. But it's pleasant for a good portion of the country. Okay, if you look up here, there's more moisture working in the atmosphere. This is in response to a deep upper trough digging down. This will spark some severe weather for areas of the north central and upper Midwest portion of the country today. We'll talk about that. Then we still got the ridge that's built all the way up across the western areas of the country, where it'll be another very hot day. So this is what's going on. You can see the deep dry air penetrating most of the country. It's nice to see. And in response, there's not a whole lot going on radar. There's not really much. This is probably one of the quieter mornings of the summer, to be honest with you. We do got some heavy rain falling in the northern portion of New York State. Some showers and downpours around southeast Virginia. We got some showers and even some storm action in the Big Bend areas of Florida. Some storms right off the coastline of Louisiana and Texas. Some moisture drifting around in the southwest. But, I mean, we don't have any huge complexes of storms rumbling through Kansas or Oklahoma, Missouri, or Arkansas this morning. It's pretty quiet, and that is because we have this dry, stable air. Now, for areas like Texas, you're going to be not a huge topic, but you will definitely be a topic in this video this evening. Stay tuned. We're watching that tropical wave that's not there yet, but could become a tropical wave as a piece of energy flies in from the east into the Gulf of Mexico. And we need to watch this. We really do. But, of course, it's not there yet, so we won't talk in super detail on it, but there's a lot of model guidance pointing to something crossing the Gulf of Mexico, and who knows, maybe it can deliver some rain to Texas. Remember I talked about over the last couple videos, watch it take a tropical system to break the drought in Texas. Man, that might end up being the case, but we're not going to talk about all of that right now because we don't know the details, but stay tuned for tonight for sure if you're interested in an update on the tropics. we'll get very detailed. But Storm Prediction Center, guys, there is a marginal risk. Strong to severe storms are possible for the South Carolina, Georgia coastline, southeast, southern Georgia, and the peninsula into the Big Bend and Panhandle areas of Florida today. The stalled frontal boundary, I mean, you can actually see it where they draw the chance of showers and storms. It's right into here. It really indicates where the stalled boundary is. Now, you look up here, you got a slight risk, level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. The dark green's a level 1 out of 5. This is because of an upper trough digging down to the Dakotas out of southern Canada. This will bring ripe conditions for probably some kind of line of storms that sweeps through areas of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, even into the UP of Michigan later in the period today. So the tornado risk with this, just a 2% risk. We'll see if this increases on later updates. For now, the storm structure, I'm just thinking it's just going to be a line of storms. 2% risk of a tornado. This does include Minneapolis, Duluth, and everybody in the green here. The wind threat, there's a 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in any given location. And the hail threat with this, 15% risk also of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger in this yellow area. So, I mean, luckily, nothing too crazy, but again, we do have another slight risk. And this system will continue to kind of chug along and affect the entire kind of Great Lakes region and Northeast throughout the next couple of days. But I'm not seeing any kind of extreme severe weather out of this. I'm really not. The excessive rainfall outlook, I don't even have that up because there's not really going to be any big problems of flooding today. But I will need to watch Florida, coastal regions of Georgia and South Carolina, and even North Carolina today, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Heat advisories, excessive heat warnings out for the Pacific Northwest. Brutally hot conditions for this time of the year. We'll be flexing because of this ridge, flexing across the western U.S. And yes, we do have heat advisories, excessive heat watches already building back into South Texas, but unfortunately, most models do indicate another huge ridge of high pressure that's going to dominate the central portion of the country. They'll move in next week, but there is model guidance that differs. There could be an upper trough somewhere in the Northeast that could try to fight this back. We might actually throw that into the video tonight also. So it's a tricky situation. I think we could have a really good air mass that moves in to certain sections of the country next week, but how far will it get? Will it beat back that ridge further west? What's going to happen? It's a tough call. Temperatures as of right now, and we'll update this because I made this about 30 minutes ago. Temperatures as of right now, guys. I mean, areas in the Cumberland Plateau waking up to the upper and mid 50s. There's areas waking up to the 50s in the mountains of North Carolina, even Tennessee. You're waking up to some upper to mid 60s in the upstate of South Carolina. Atlanta, Georgia, you've gotten down to the mid 60s. Low 60s, even some upper 50s in the mountains of North Georgia. I mean, look at Alabama. It's nice. Mississippi, it's nice. Most of Tennessee, pleasant conditions. Now there is a tight gradient. These are temperatures, but there is a tight gradient between somewhat dry and comfortable area waking up to and still very moist and warm temperatures. And unfortunately, I'm on that warm side here in Columbia. It's still just your typical late summer temperatures out there, but I'm hoping we can get a crisp morning, maybe not a crisp, but a nicer morning tomorrow morning or the next. But anyways, we're going to watch to see how far this dry air sort of inches. It just depends on what this stalled boundary is going to do. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of days how cool and dry we can get these temperatures a little bit further southeast. But it's nice conditions, pretty much everybody, especially on the west side of the Alps. So, and you can see it here. This is our stalled boundary on the surface cold front or boundary. It's a weak surface boundary, and it's pretty much a stalled out. So basically, I would say if you're along or just east of this, you're going to have numerous chances of showers and storms today. Now, I expect this to drift a little bit further east throughout the day and southeast. So everybody pretty much in this area today, I would say really hugging the coastline of the southeast. A lot of shower and storm activity is possible. And this might dominate the pattern over the next couple of days. But everybody on the west side of this, some dry air filters in, even as far south as the Gulf coastline. So this is actually kind of what's going on, what's driving this. It's a very interesting feature. And this is draped across this region. And that's why everybody in here is experiencing some more pleasant conditions this morning. As far as rain, you can see the boundary, and the projected rainfall is really going to tell the story when I show you that here in a second. But Florida, I mean, I would say if you're from the Big Bend areas, the Jacksonville areas of Florida, point south, just anybody could experience widespread downpours and storms today. Some people might not get a drop of rain, but I think most people have a good chance. We get well, this is this afternoon, a lot of shower and storm activity this evening, overnight tonight. It's still ongoing. It's still drifting around out here. A lot of rain throughout the entire peninsula of Florida. And this stalled boundary is what's going to potentially help some kind of energy to get sparked right here, maybe in the eastern Gulf of Mexico here in the coming days. We got to watch this. These stalled boundaries just kind of sit around for too long, and eventually you get some energy at the tail end of these boundaries that fire up some energy in the Gulf of Mexico. But look at the rain. Look at the gradient up here in Georgia and Alabama and the panhandle of Florida. It goes from like no rain to, an inch of rain projected in like a 1 hour driving distance. So you see Florida, it's really scattered about, but some areas could see 1 to 2 inches of rain. Some areas could just see maybe a tenth, a quarter inch of rain. Some areas might not see a drop of rain in Florida, but I mean, all models indicate that it's going to be a pretty stormy day in Florida today. Up here in Georgia, the Carolinas, we got some showers this morning in the Carolinas. This will kind of drift around. This boundary will continue to slowly, I would think, sag southeastward. And then as you get into 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon, some storms begin to fire along that I-95 corridor, just east and south of it, but I would say more so rather east. And, this is around 5 p.m. You got some storms around the Florence area, Orangeburg, storms Charleston, just inland off Savannah. And then they become really widespread. I think it could be a very stormy afternoon, evening, just inland off the coast. And I mean, this is potentially what it could look like around 7 p.m. Very stormy conditions. And some of these areas could pick up a lot of rain as the boundary slows. It's not like a sweeping cold front anymore. These storms that swept through the Carolinas yesterday was some of the worst of the summer. I'm sure locally, if here in the Carolinas, you heard what happened in Durham yesterday, North Carolina. I mean, they got clobbered. It looked like just a huge tornado went through as far as the damage. It was an 88 mile per hour wind gust, the highest wind gust ever recorded in the National Weather Service here in Columbia, my neck of the woods, in my neighborhood. I mean, a football field away from where I'm sitting right now, a tree fell on a windshield of a truck. I'm very lucky because I got 2 huge oak trees, live oaks in my backyard. We just had some limbs that fell. Very, very lucky and blessed. But there's a lot of people that big trees fell everywhere in the area. Those storms were crazy. They just flew in and out so fast too. But anyways, some more storms again. I don't think these are going to be like yesterday, but they will be slow movers. They will kind of move over the same areas because the boundary is stalled. There's no really west to east movement to these storms, but these will continue to fly through the region. I mean, we're at about midnight, still dealing with heavy rain. The coastal regions, I think they kind of make it to the coastal regions later in the evening. And we'll wake up tomorrow morning and probably do it again, but maybe this front is a little bit further off, far enough east to where it's maybe not as stormy tomorrow. We have to watch. But rainfall between now and the next 24 hours, guys, anywhere from a quarter inch of rain to 2 to 3 inches of rain. Really anywhere. It's going to be tough, but look at the gradient. It's a tough gradient today to figure out. I mean, it's wild to try to figure this one out today, but you can obviously see where the front is based off the rainfall gradient. But man, if you lived along the I-95 corridor through Georgia and the Carolinas, definitely, especially east of it, you're going to get a good bit of rain today, I would think. What could happen in the Northeast today? You're dealing with some showers and some heavy downpours in northern sections of the Northeast. We get into this afternoon, some more downpours could get fired up in the Adirondacks, central New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, even some storms possible, some showers, downpours, even in the extreme coastal regions of New Jersey, Long Island, Maine. Very isolated to scattered about. Nothing super widespread, I don't think, but some downpours could certainly make their way into Western Mass later this evening. And we'll certainly watch for that. Sound like there might be a cat in here with me, so if you see a cat come up behind me, well, there he or she is. But nothing too crazy in the Northeast today, just some general showers, maybe a storm there could be a strong to severe storm somewhere, but I would bet that it's not going to be a big deal. Let's go to the south central U.S. Let's give an update on these temperatures. And look at this. I'm very happy for you folks this morning. It made me smile looking at this. It really did. Missouri, you're very comfortable. The air temperatures aren't very low, right? I mean, you're waking up. If you're in the immediate Dallas-Fort Worth area, you live there, your urban heat islands probably only got you down to maybe 70, 72 degrees. But you go, I would say just outside the city limits, especially east and northeast of town, you're probably in the mid to upper 60s, which, isn't crazy low. But you combine that with dew points that are 5 to 10 degrees lower than that. 65 degrees feels amazing, I'm sure, to some of you folks out there. So it's very pleasant. It's nice. You're in the low 60s in Memphis, Little Rock, mid 60s, Jackson, mid 60s, Shreveport, mid 60s, and it's a nice mid 60s. Even there's a little pocket of cooler air, even in Oklahoma, where you're in the upper 50s. You also look at combine this with the dew points. I mean, dew points in the mid to upper 50s to low 60s. So it's nice, a pleasant change of air mass. It really is. Not that true, first fall cold front we look for, but it is a nice punch of dry air that has allowed temperatures to drop in this region. So it's really nice. As far as rainfall today, guys, nothing really expected. We could have some showers, maybe a storm possible in South Texas, which we could use the rain. Outside of that, that is the bad news. No rain expected. So we have to continue to watch when our next, shot of rain is here. But, a nice day. The temperatures are starting to build, and they will continue to build back up into the region. But enjoy this morning for sure. Temperatures up here in the north central U.S., it's really pleasant. Like in Illinois, the northern half of Indiana, Michigan has actually got a little chill going on. In fact, southern Michigan is cooler than the UP of Michigan, and that's just because you got an upper trough moving through that's basically increasing the moisture in the atmosphere, not allowing for your temperatures to drop as far. So you're waking up with actually higher moisture in the atmosphere, so which means your wet bulb temperature is higher than it is, say, down here in this pocket of cooler air to the south. So it doesn't allow your temperature to drop as much. I know that's geeking out a little bit, but hope that makes sense. But temperatures are nice in Iowa. Definitely open your windows, let some of this air in, where you can get your house refreshed. Maybe you already done that, but it just indicates, we're getting closer to the changing of the seasons. I mean, once you start to get to mid-August, to me, you're really starting to take that downhill slope to the end of summer. So waking up to some nice conditions. As far as severe weather today, upper trough moves through, associated deepening surface low with this upper trough, and we'll start off around 3-4 p.m. I think we'll have a skinny line of storms that develops. If you live in northeast Minnesota especially, I think a line of storms will sweep through this area. Not a whole lot of people live in this region, but I heard this is a beautiful portion of the country. Expect maybe an intense line of storms that moves through around 5-6 p.m. Duluth. This will roll through your area probably late afternoon, early evening, right around dinner time. The models differ on if storms will even form down here in Minneapolis, but they very well could. Even though you don't see any storms in Minneapolis, you very well could get some storms later this afternoon, this evening. But I would definitely say the higher chances up here. You stop it here, it's around 8, 9, 10 p.m. In the far northern areas of Wisconsin, there is some pretty intense storms going on. If you live around that Highway 2 range, basically from Duluth to Ashland, you guys could definitely get hit hard right when the sun's setting later today. But these storms start to knock on the doorstep of the western UP of Michigan, still affecting northern sections of Wisconsin, and start moving through the entire UP of Michigan throughout the overnight hours. I think they lose some steam, but you could definitely, if you live in the UP of Michigan after midnight tonight, I definitely think you need to just be aware. I don't think you're going to get any devastating severe weather by any means, but I certainly think you could hear some rumbles of thunder tonight, and some strong to severe storms could make their way through, but there's a marginal risk that even extends out into the overnight hours. Same thing Green Bay. This is what the storms could look like around 2 a.m. tonight. Some heavy rain beginning to move into the Green Bay area. This looks like it's right over the central UP of Michigan. Some storms even down into central Wisconsin, and then we're waking up tomorrow morning, and it could be raining pretty good, maybe storming in areas of western Michigan, eastern UP of Michigan. Maybe a skinny line of storms making their way through Chicago. So as far as winds with this, damaging winds, we will have to watch this corridor of stronger winds. We could get some 30 to 40, maybe 50 mile per hour wind gusts with this, and it'll be quite breezy behind this with this deepening surface low, which typically enhances the dynamics, and really with a tightening gradient causes stronger winds. And I definitely think it's going to be breezy even ahead of this, but behind it and along this line, it will definitely be very breezy. So definitely expect some gusty winds over the next 24 hours up here. And the updraft velocity swath, I really likes this area of northern Wisconsin. We cannot rule out a tornado threat in the northeast areas of Minnesota, northern areas of Wisconsin, even the UP of Michigan. There's a couple areas to watch, but just be weather aware, heed any warnings, especially those tornado warnings for sure. But the rest of the north central U.S. pretty quiet. We take a broader approach to this. I definitely think we'll have some showers that will kind of pivot behind this, some cooler showers, some cooler air that comes behind this surface low and upper trough. Some showers will be possible in northern Minnesota behind this system. And we'll even probably wake up to some showers around the Duluth area into the western UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin as we're waking up tomorrow morning. The Rockies, the western U.S., some showers possible in the Four Corner states. Nevada, those higher elevations of California could certainly get some rain showers. Some heavier rain could set up over central Arizona. I definitely could think you could see some storm action in north and southern areas of Arizona. Watch out for a strong or severe storm or two. It is very possible. But watch out around the Phoenix area. You guys get to some showers and storms today. And these might eventually drift into the overnight hours into southern areas of Oregon, western areas of Nevada. But not a super big deal or anything like that by any means. Kind of the same pattern you guys have seen over the last few days. Temperatures are brutal, though. If you're a viewer, and I know I leave you guys hanging a lot out west, it's very hard to get detailed. I've mentioned this many times before. There's many microclimates out west with some people living 2,000 or 3,000 feet up in the air, 4,000 feet up in the air. Other people living 8 to 9, 10,000 feet up in the air. Obviously, the temperatures are going to vary depending on elevation. But let me know how hot you guys have been getting out here. If you live out here, I would love to know. It's mind-boggling that it can get this hot in Washington State and Oregon, but here it is in these valley areas. It's heating up in Idaho, well over 100 degrees. California, which the valley here in Sacramento, things like that, is notorious for getting very, very hot. And obviously, the desert Southwest gets very, very hot. But stay cool out there. Temperature's still above average for sure, well above average. Beautiful air mass still over the Ohio Valley, Midwest, 70s and 80s. Another beautiful day in the Mid-South. But warming up still into just typical summer-type conditions in the Carolinas and Deep South. But nothing compared to yesterday. We broke record highs or the day before. Nice in the Northeast, 60s, 70s, maybe some low 80s, especially as you work in the Southeast, PA, New Jersey. And warm as we have some compressional heating ahead of this upper trough. Warm ahead of this upper trough as it warms into the upper 80s, low 90s in the upper Midwest. Let's give you an update on the tropics. See if we can muster enough energy to make it through this. I think we can. We're doing pretty good on time here. So there's 3 areas to watch. I want to mention right off the dot because they dropped this to like a 10% chance of developing this first wave. Now they have increased this to a 40% risk. And they've kept this other wave behind it coming off North Africa as we speak. They've kept it a 30% risk. But now they've increased this to a 40% risk of developing. But this is new. We now have a 20% risk of something developing in the Gulf of Mexico within the next 7 days. So I really think we need to watch this. Of course, we need to watch these too. But we need to figure out here which piece of energy becomes the dominant piece of energy. Because models are all over the place with that. But here, it's a little bit more cut and dry, but it's always still tough to figure out. And I can tell you a lot of times, homegrown activity ends up verifying more on the high end than the low end. The Gulf of Mexico is basically on fire right now. The sea surface temperatures are very warm. So we need to watch any piece of energy that gets going in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, we've seen it year after year, literally, where things just sneak up and surprise us in the Gulf of Mexico and just off the coast of the southeast. So here's our very broad piece of energy just off the coast of North Africa. Okay, this is the other tropical wave right here, all sitting in the monsoonal trough right out here. You're not going to see the energy yet for what comes into the Gulf of Mexico. We will see what emerges over the next few days. But you can tell this looks like a pretty robust wave, well out in what we call the MDR, which stands for Main Development Region, or the Tropical Atlantic, or you could just call it the Atlantic. So we're watching what this does. What becomes the dominant piece of energy? Will one dominate the other? Will we have two? Will we have neither? We got to figure that one out. So what's interesting is some of you might be familiar. Levi Cohen, he runs the Tropical Tidbits site, which is what I use often on my weather videos. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a master with the tropics, with anything weather, but he really hones in on the tropics. He's great. He's a great follow on every single social media platform, but especially YouTube. I've learned so much from this guy. He explains things in a way where the audience can understand. He geeks out, nerds out, but he really explains it in a way where, like I said, you guys can understand, I can understand, and I have a hard time taking in knowledge without being repetitive with it. I have to be repetitive with something. I'm definitely not somebody that hears something one time or does something one time and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I'm like that with directions and going somewhere new, but not with learning stuff. So he's an incredible follow, but anyways, he mentions the fact that the back half of August will be the first test of the theory that a warm Atlantic can lead to periods of significant tropical activity despite an El Nino. What we know about El Nino is typically hurricane season is pretty relaxed. And yes, there is a cat. And now she's on my lap. So basically, we know that the sea surface temperatures are boiling out there. But can that actually overcome the fact that it's El Nino, which typically leads to a lot of suppression in the Atlantic? So I'm not going to read all this out. It basically goes on to say there's going to be a period of rising air that moves into this area, moves into the tropical Atlantic. This green is rising air. And basically, the warmer colors you see on your screen, the oranges, things like that, that is sinking air, which we know sinking air leads to lack of convection. Rising air leads to more convection. So all this green heading out into the tropical Atlantic will move into what is a very favorable conditions in the Pacific, will move into the Atlantic, and then we will have an opportunity in a very favorable climatology time of the year, which is late August, early September, with a very, very warm sea surface temperatures for a high bit of tropical activity to really fire up. But will it be offset by the fact that it's El Nino? So it's going to be a big test for the second half of the month. So what we do know is we look at the European, it's going to show, this is what we call vortices. So it's going to show pieces of energy. This is the best way to look at it. It shows a piece of energy right here, piece of energy right here. And then you see this over Florida. All right, this area right over Florida. There's multiple areas to watch. Okay, piece of energy, piece of energy, piece of energy. We will see if this, which is that area of interest that we're hearing about from the National Hurricane Center, will try to develop and do something along the Gulf coastline. Okay, now the European wants to latch on to the second wave. So this wave right here wants to latch on to this, not this. Okay, so we go back to this, and it really latches onto that second wave and really turns it into a big old system a little bit later on down the road. It's very confusing which wave is which because there's so much going on, right? I mean, this is kind of right now, all right? And it really takes the first wave, fizzles it out, develops it at first, then it takes that second wave and really develops into a big system. You see this really highlighted area. It's not really highlighted, but you can see this huge area on the screen. That is what would be probably the second area of interest that we need to watch out for. Now, you look at the GFS, okay, it takes this first area of energy and really develops into a very strong storm, turns into a hurricane. Now it's trying to develop this too this weekend. At the same time, you see this little energy right here in the Gulf of Mexico. It's trying to get this going too. So you got a couple things going here. You got this little area of yellow and orange right here in the Gulf of Mexico. Think of that as energy in the Gulf of Mexico, a piece of vortice in the low levels of the atmosphere. You got this tropical wave. You got this one behind it that the European does develop, kind of beginning to weaken. And you got this first feature, which has a 40% risk right now to develop, becoming the dominating feature out in the Atlantic. And this develops into a pretty strong system. That wave makes landfall somewhere in Louisiana and Texas as a weak system. But we stop at about 10 days out. And we have basically a 975 millibar low pressure hurricane, not this weekend, but next weekend, just north of the Lesser Antilles. Now, this is in no man's land. This is not going to happen. Something different will happen. We know that for a guarantee. I'm confident in that. But what we do know is things are probably about to get very active out in the tropical Atlantic. They really are. So the European ensemble, I'm only going out 120 hours too. So this is only about 4 or 5 days out. It shows this wave getting going over Florida, about to emerge into the Gulf of Mexico. There's many members that show this. And then it's everywhere out here. It's really sloppy. It really is. It's just kind of everywhere. It's hard to figure out what the models are latching onto, what piece of energy. It's trying to latch on to many pieces of energy. So we're going to get a little bit more detail tonight. I got a lot more detail in this video than I wanted to, but here we are. You know how I am. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Have a great Wednesday, and I'll talk to you tonight.